Yo, Green Man coming at ya. Guys, please, for the love of God, please don't green screen in my suit, please. Son of a bitch. Hi, welcome to Film Stash. My name is Douglas Campbell. So right now, at the time of this recording, there isn't exactly a whole lot out currently in theaters that I want to check out, but the latest season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia finally wrapped. This week, I'm just going to talk about that. In case you don't know what the show's about, Always Sunny follows the gang. Charlie, Mac, Dennis, Dee, and Frank. 5 of the worst people imaginable. They're coming up with new plans for personal gain. They screw each other over. These guys are the worst people alive. And the dark humor of the show and the taboo topics that they talk about, it's what really makes this show great. I've been obsessed with this show since college whenever I binge watched it for the first time. I got my fiance into it. I got my brother into it. We are constantly quoting this thing, like all the time. Whenever it was still a thing, my fiance and I, we went to the live taping of the Always Sunny podcast in Philadelphia. Like, that shit was fun. R.I.P. the Always Sunny podcast. I will remember you. But if you are a fan of the show, and maybe you'll agree with me on this thing, within the last few years, something felt off. Since season 13, I feel like the show has struggled to find its identity within the 2020s. And with episodes pulled from streaming, possible pressures for the network, which is now Disney, and the television and comedy scene changing within the last 20 years, it feels like the gang is in a bit of an identity crisis. This feeling has been going on for a while, and it certainly doesn't help that now there's 2 years in between each season. And while I don't have all the inside information, and a lot of it is still left up to speculation, I think that the struggle overall is the creative direction of the show now that you're 20 years in. Do you go more off of story-based ideas and the comedy that comes naturally from these characters and their decisions? Or now that you've known the gang for so long, you just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, and just throw gimmicks out left and right? The show's been doing both for a while, but I think the longer this goes on, the more those undertones and frustrations bubble to the surface behind the scenes. During the podcast's Christmas live stream, Charlie Day and Charlie Day and Rob Mack, they got into kind of a heated discussion on the creative nature of their show. It was still very professional, but
you are very conservative. You don't like change. You don't like weird things. So if someone were to say, let's go to Ireland for a season, which is what I was pitching, you were like, no, that's too weird.
Well, no, it's not. It's
and you're already saying no.
Well, no, you're saying how I write, and I don't think that it's that I don't like change.
I can see you even getting upset right now.
I am getting upset because
the truth is you reject and back me, do or don't. You are afraid of change, straight up.
Well, can I say my point of view? I don't like writing stories that come from an outside motivation. Get turned off by things like just Ireland being the best. So the pitch was, we just are in Ireland every episode for all 8. Guys, I got news, and we do the same dynamic, but we just have a new bar in Ireland. I don't like what to me felt like a gimmick.
And that little debate on the Christmas live stream, it became the emphasis of what fans considered the modern problems of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Do you go with characterizations or gimmicks? But like a sports fan that doesn't abandon their home team no matter how far in the shitter they are, me and my fiance, we kept watching the show year after year. But if there's one thing that's noticeable if you have been following the show and you did follow the podcast for a while, whenever the podcast was still going and it was kind of going in tandem with the writing of the show, things got better, which naturally excited me for the future of the show. But then the podcast ended, so I became a little bit nervous again. I don't know if I'll do this every season of Sunny moving forward, but at least for now, I'm going to review this whole season. I'm going to go through episode by episode, see what I think of the current direction of Sunny, and at the very end of it, I will rate it out of 1 out of 5. And so with that said, let's get right into the show. But before we get into our Sunny discussion, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share this with your friends, and comment below. Any help that you give my channel would be greatly appreciated. My goal for the end of the year is hopefully to get to 500 subscribers. Any way you can help me out, I would greatly appreciate it, and if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. Now, truth be told, I haven't seen Abbott Elementary, but my brother swears to Christ that it's a good show. I'll take his word for it that it's a good show. I'm just not crazy about the idea of pairing up a family show with a show that's as naturally raunchy as It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It seemed to me like a weird gimmick that only Rob Mack could come up with, or corporate synergy. Corporate synergy or not, this type of idea, I think it is a little ambitious. These shows have two wildly different tones, and so, you know what? Sure, but it felt very uneven. Now, I'll give the crossover episode some credit. I think the Abbott half, it was pretty decent, and I think how they took the gang from a TVMA show and adapted them into a TV PG show while keeping their characteristics, I thought it was pretty well done. But when it came to the Sunny half, like, there were great moments in that half of the show, but I feel like there was just a lot of wasted potential. Whenever it focused on the gang's antics in the school, I thought it was great, but then it would just cut into like the interview segments from the Abbott Elementary show, and it just consistently messed up with the flow of that episode. It just felt very uneven. Where with the first half of the crossover, it felt very Abbott focused, but it was like, you know, perfect. The second half of the crossover with Always Sunny, it just felt like a series of skits, but it pretty much felt like a continuation of the first half of the crossover. I felt like wasn't completely fair for this concept. It should have been almost exclusively the Sunny half of the same events that we saw from the first half of the crossover. Dennis was weirdly absent in the first half of the crossover, which I thought was hilarious, honestly. But it made me more excited to see, oh my god, so what's his involvement going to be in the second half of the crossover? And then nothing really happens. It didn't amount to too much, unfortunately. I am going to drop this little mouse tool here because I think it will play into a later arc of the season. I would rate this episode 2 out of 5 coffees. Frank ends up in a coma, so Charlie, Dennis, and Mac, they reevaluate their futures while Dee is going through the 5 stages of grief back at home. I feel like there really is not a whole lot to discuss within this episode. While this episode itself wasn't amazing, I do appreciate that the writers are trying to go back to the basics of the older Sunny episodes, and I feel like that this should have been the true season premiere. This episode, similarly to the last couple of seasons, it lacked energy. It lacked energy from most of the main cast because they are aging. They are getting older, which within itself isn't too much of a problem as long as the writing got adapted for these guys, but the writing in this one, it did lack sort of like the last couple of seasons, which had me concerned for how things were going to go. But the highlights of this episode for sure, it was Nat Wolff as a coked out rich kid and Dee going through the stages of grief in like typical Dee fashion. So a classic Caitlin Olsen freakout is great to see. Here is a slight spoiler alert ahead. 3, 2, 1, go. The twist ending where Frank's comatose body was cake, that saved the episode. That surprise ending alone, it made this episode worth watching, and it was hilarious. It was so great. But then whenever it's like cake, it was like, holy shit. That was awesome. I think it's going to be a new classic Frank moment that's going to be in the compilation along with him crawling out the couch. So for that moment alone, I think it elevates this episode to about a 3 out of 5 Frank cakes. Now, truthfully, this episode, it should have been called The Gang Gets Spicy. But yeah. This episode, it's very chaotic. Frank accidentally poisons a guy. Mac and Dennis become EMTs. They try it out. Charlie unleashes his inner the bear. And Dee becomes a Postmate delivery person. Oh, right. And the gang, they microdose on peppers along the way. Now, whenever you lay these ideas all out on a table, it just sounds very chaotic. Not just for this show, but really for like any show. It's like, what do really any of these things have to do with each other? But the pure chaos, the kinetic energy, the weird editing, and of course, like the fast pace, just, it really brings this weird concept together, and it's hilarious. I was laughing my ass off throughout this whole thing, and it felt like classic Sunny. The energy that I talked about in the last episode that was missing the last episode and the past couple seasons, it was back. And not to play my hand like too soon, but it's looking like things are kind of going up from here. 5 out of 5 jalapeno peppers. Pretty much the gang searches for a scapegoat after some bad press. Now this episode, it isn't my favorite. I think it's a little step back from what we did the last episode. I think the story structure of how it's loosely set up through little stories that gradually fill in the gap of what happened, with the gang blaming each other along the way. It made for a pretty solid episode. From what I understand, this episode was supposed to be parodying Succession, and I think if I saw the show Succession, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. But even with me not seeing it, I thought this was a pretty fun episode. And so I would give this episode a pretty solid 3 out of 5 baby oils. So Frank tricks the gang into going into a dog track, Dennis and Dee try gambling out, and Charlie and Mac, in order to rediscover the raw dog that was missing in their lives, they come across the dog track janitor, takes them on a philosophical journey. The setup itself, it is classic Sunny. I like seeing these guys get put into multiple different locations and mining the jokes that do come from these different locations. And a joke that they've used throughout the show's run, I think is still great here, is whenever the gang, at least for an episode, they hyper-obsess over a new word or phrase, and the joke is just that they're constantly using this phrase. The word of the day is raw dog! Ah! This episode, even with its editing, it continues that kinetic energy that the EMT episode had. And ultimately, the Dee and Dennis story was the best part of the episode. It also just shows how comedically dark that this show is. I would give this episode 4 out of 5 hot dogs. This episode, it is a follow-up 20 years later of season 1's underage drinking, a national concern. It sees the return of Trey and Tammy, who are now in their 40s, as Dennis and Dee, they try to swoop into their lives and recreate the forbidden love teen drama that they had back in season 1. This episode, it is so sad, but it is so funny. This was ultimately the mission statement of Rob Mack whenever he made this show back in the day. You create these awful characters, the longer the show goes on, and the longer that they don't change, the sadder it gets. And the sadder it gets, the funnier it gets. Dee and Dennis, in their 50s now, just being trapped in this high school teen drama bullshit. They haven't changed at all, and that's what makes it funny. But Charlie and Mac, they go on their own little side quest. Frank has gone missing. Their side quest was funny. I don't think it was as funny as Dee and Dennis being super, super pathetic. This episode, it isn't my favorite either, but I think it's just the commitment 20 years later from the first season that really excites me for the future of the show. This gets 3 out of 5 beers. The gang discover that Frank is on the Golden Bachelor, and so they set up rehearsal dinners to impress the Golden Bachelor crew that's coming into Philadelphia. A lot of these episodes are very chaotic, but if there's one sense I could use to describe what this episode is, I would say it's Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal meets It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And if you've seen the show The Rehearsal, then you just know how great this episode is. It tackles the anxieties of perception, people's perception of yourself, and people's perception to your reactions to other events and life and just everything. It is just a fruitless woe, and ultimately, people and scenarios, they are very unpredictable. So rehearsals like this and woes like this do not work. You just kind of have to take life on, and if people like you, they like you, and if they don't, they don't, and it is what it is. Let's pick up that little mouse tool that I dropped earlier. After binging these episodes again, Dennis's absence, it foreshadowed this episode. It foreshadowed the events of the season. He was traumatized by how he was shown on television during Family Feud. Dennis and his control freak nature in this episode, it completely stole everything. His monologue was crazy supervillain-like. It was wonderfully funny and creepy. It dug deeper into just how the gang ages, which I thought was fantastic. Besides Dennis freaking out about just how he's going to look on TV, it really comes from his anxieties of aging. He's getting older just like everybody else, and if he can't hold on to that persona that he's had for so long, what does he really have left? This was so hilarious. I would give this a 4 out of 5 Nair shampoos. Frank participates in the Golden Bachelor to find a new love in his life. Now, this whole episode, it's a gimmick, but it's a really, really fun gimmick that I kind of wish that we had more of it, honestly. I just wanted more of Frank on The Bachelor. This was a fantastic way to end the new season of Sunny. Now, I haven't actually seen The Golden Bachelor itself, but based off of how the episode was edited, the sets, the lighting, the structure of everything, even the cameras that were used, The crew really did their homework on this thing. It really felt like an episode of one of these reality TV shows. But to grab someone so despicable like Frank and just plop him into a reality TV show like this, it was just so funny. It ends surprisingly really sweet. And it teases a very monumental change to the show that, honestly, like, even though I like the gang going back to status quo, this is a change I'm actually kind of excited for if they follow through with it. If there's really any issue that I've had with this particular episode, it's unfortunately the very topical reference of using a Hawk Tuah type girl. By the time this episode aired, like, the Hawk Tuah girl was already outdated in pop culture. I can forgive it a little bit, but I also think that this one was probably not their best use of a reference ever. Like with the recent finales of Always Sunny lately, the writers decided to take one member of the gang and find a moment to humanize them. Often these endings, whenever they highlight the humanity of these cast of characters and just how sad their lives are. With this one with Frank, like, it shows, like, I think a little glimmer of hope for him. I've been honestly mixed about these endings that the show has been doing lately because it does slightly go against the philosophy of the show. I don't know. I like these moments. I think it does add something to these characters after I've been watching them for so many years now. Besides a really heartwarming ending with Frank and his new love, the show ends with a really touching tribute to Lynn Marie Stewart. R.I.P. Miss Kelly. You will be missed. I would give this episode 4 out of 5 Golden Roses. And so to wrap things up here on Season 17 of Sunny, I had a great time with this one. I was very pleasantly surprised how they wrote this one. This was like one of the best seasons within the last 5 years. It's nice to see Glenn, Rob, and Charlie and the writers like go back to their roots. I think that we are going into a new direction of Sunny, and I'm very excited to see where they go with it. Thank you for watching this video. So if you guys have seen Season 17 of Sunny, comment below, like, what'd you think of it? Did you like this season? Did you not like this season? What's your favorite episode? Comment below, let me know. Well, that's all the time we have for today here on Film Stash. My name is Douglas Campbell, and if you excuse me, I'm gonna add to the stash.